Hello. I hope you're all doing well. I guess it's dark out now. But lighting's not too bad. Let me see if this works. Nah, not bad. Oh no, that's awful. Okay. Enough fussing. Um, okay. Today we are going to talk about asymmetric information in financial markets. Really getting into very relevant stuff here. Many of you are finance majors. Many of you, I imagine, are hoping to go to Wall Street when you leave here. And we will talk about why that makes sense, why being a finance major pays well, why getting a degree in business or economics and going to Wall Street pays very well, and why the whole business on Wall Street, the whole financial services sector is corrupt and destructive. Okay, here we have some things that are not corrupt or destructive. Animals. Excuse me. Somewhere back behind me, sleeping on the couch is Corduroy. He was walking around this room until I started talking. He knows I start to talk. I start to profess, and he to sleep. Okay. Oh, more cute dogs. Not quite sure what's going on with that dog, but okay. And we have funny looking animals. And what adorable dog. And here's Corduroy trying to dig a stick out of the snow. This is from last year, but I could have taken a picture the other day because when I walked in the morning, there was still snow on the ground. So that was cool. But anyway, this is from last year, and whatever, it's a picture I had in here. He hasn't changed much. Financial markets, why they fail. I'll also talk about why they're supposed to succeed, but that's much less interesting. Various things to do, read, quizzes. Oh my God, the last discussion is coming up. Ooh, okay. Asymmetric information, again, when your parents, you're sitting around the Christmas table, and your parents say to you, oh, what did you learn this semester? Tell them you learned about asymmetric information, how it is the source of financial market monopoly and excess profit. Something, technically, it's not the only source. There are barriers to entry, but it is the big one. Financial market competition. The reason asymmetric information matters is because financial markets are not competitive, cannot be competitive, because some people know more than other people. And that, if people know that some people know more than they do, which leads to brand names, leads to monopoly, and limits competition. Asymmetric information ruins all markets. It ruins markets for healthcare. It ruins markets for used cars. It ruins markets for loans, borrowing, etc. Monopolistic financial institutions, because they can get away with it, they will often take on too much risk. And there are systemic reasons why they will take on too much risk. And we'll talk about that. Okay, here are just some prominent cases. Some of these people are still prominent in the world. There is Bernie Madoff over here. He's getting a little bit old, but he was such a thief that it's worth remembering. Then there's I think Jonathan Skilling of Enron, getting a little bit old. I go, oh my God, these people stole billions and billions of dollars and got away with it. And then Rick Scott, senator from Florida, paid the largest fine in the history of the Medicare program, having stolen well over $500 million from Medicare through fraudulent billing, just made up stuff. The hospitals that he controlled, they just made up stuff, billed Medicare, and eventually were caught. Took a while. Some are not punished. These are more frauds. There's Gary Cohn, former chief economist to the former guy. There's the former guy on trial now for financial fraud in New York. The chief financial officer of the Trump organization has testified about how they lied. I mean, they want some stuff that's really so ridiculous. I mean, like he had a 5,000 square foot apartment in New York. He claimed on his mortgage forms that it was 30,000 square feet. And it's like, whatever. But why did they check? Well, they trusted him. Why did they trust him? They were fools. Or maybe the banks that he was borrowing from, they were just going to be selling the mortgages to somebody else. And they knew that he was lying, but they thought the people they were selling the mortgages to would not know he was lying. Asymmetric information. They knew something that the other people didn't, so they could sell those mortgages, make a profit. She had asymmetric information about her blood test program, which was ridiculous. She made completely absurd claims. People chose to believe her. Why did they believe her? Because she was beautiful, because she had dropped out of Stanford, and everybody thinks that anybody who drops out of Stanford and goes into high tech must be a Steve Jobs in the making. She knew that she was lying, and then she claimed that Pfizer and other companies had approved her product. People just chose to believe her. People want to believe when they think they can make money. They know they don't really know, so they want to trust somebody. There's probably some psychology here. I don't know, but it's anyway. So she's sentenced 11 years plus supervised release. You have to pay back such money as she can, which is not much. Now, why don't we worry more about that? When I say we, as usual, I mean economists. Why don't economists worry more about this, about financial markets, about fraud? Well, because economists figure that competition is going to do away with it. If you're making too much money, if you're making more profit than the standard rate, we're not going to get into what determines the standard rate. That's a whole course in itself. And again, I wish I was teaching that course now because it's great stuff. But and it's really interesting how economists have obfuscated the whole issue. But if you're making more than the standard rate, economists say, well, competition will come in. If your bank is making more money on its loans than other banks, then some other bank will come in and say, hey, we'll lend to these people at a lower interest rate and lower profit, and we will steal all your business. If you are getting more than the true cost of liquidity, remember liquidity, having cash in hand, in this state of the world. Or if you are charging a risk premium on loans that's higher than the standard, whatever that is, which is another, like I said, another whole story. If you are making more profit than the standard, then competition will drive that down. Right? Happens all the time. Like hell it is. Limited competition. Competition is, most industries are characterized by some forms of monopoly profit. Most all industries are characterized by some form of monopoly profit. But financial services more than most. The problem is asymmetric information. We know we don't know. We know we don't know whether Theranos's blood testing program, your machinery works. We know we don't know if Chase Manhattan Bank is charging too high a rate of interest. We know we don't know if United Healthcare is charging too high a premium. We know we don't know these things. So we trust that somebody will verify and check these things for us. And so we turn to financial intermediaries. We turn to banks, we turn to stockbrokers, we turn to financial advisors. Then, once we've turned to them and decided that we trust them, it's very hard to get us to change because I trust this guy. I have a financial advisor, Nick, lives over there, PhD from Eisenberg. I've known him for 15 years and I trust him. Somebody comes to me and says, I'll give you a better rate than Nick. I'm not going to go to them. I'm not going to trust somebody else. I mean, I may conceivably find somebody I trust, but I know I trust Nick. And because I trust Nick, it's hard to break in. Financial firms, banks aren't just selling liquidity when they lend us money or when they take in deposits. They're selling trust. Trust that if you deposit your money with them, it will be there in the future. Trust that when you borrow money from them, they're not going to screw you over. And the financial firms are trusting you as well. Now, risk neutrality. Insurance companies assume risk. Banks insure risk. We give them money. They promise to give us money back. They lend money to companies assuming risk for us. Will competition drive this risk premium that they charge down to a standard rate? Who knows what the risk is? Risk is a bet about the future. Who knows? Who's good at assessing risk? Nobody. Nobody's that good. But we come to trust that some people will be better than other people, which is why some of you will get jobs when you leave UMass or when you get an advanced degree, doing time series analysis and forecasts, making guesses. We all know those guesses are not going to be all that good. But if some company thinks that your guesses are better than other people's, better than average, you will be paid a whole lot of money and people will trust you. And then when your guesses turn out to be really bad, oh well. There are also regulatory barriers, apart from asymmetric information and brand name loyalty that comes from trust. There are regulatory barriers that limit entry of banks, insurance companies, stock exchanges. Why are these there? Well, government is trying to protect us from fraud. You can't just open a bank, take people's money and run away to some other country with it. But those regulatory barriers that protect us from fraud also protect companies from competition. Profits. Financial share of all corporate profits been drifting up, especially since the Reagan administration in the 1980s, when there was a whole move to deregulate banks. Well, average bonus, this average bonus in the securities industry. I should update this, but over $100,000, that includes janitors and secretaries. There are people who regularly get $20-30 million bonuses. Oh, yeah. Asymmetric information is ultimately what I say. It is the real key. I'm saying I think it's bigger than regulatory barriers to entry. There are people who will disagree with me. There are people who say, no, it's regulatory barriers. I don't think so. I mean, people do start new stock exchanges. People are able to start new banks and other financial firms. Neobank firms, which as much as half of financial activity goes through neobank firms. General Electric Capital, was the biggest part of General Electric. General Electric has gone way down. But part of the reason was that they lost so much money on GE Capital. But for a while, under Welch and later, GE Capital had become one of the biggest banks in the country. In effect, it wasn't called a bank. It wasn't regulated like a bank, but it acted like a bank. It lent money. Rich people get together and they act like a bank. And it's regulators have been behind the curve on that type of thing. So I don't think it's regulation that's the issue. I think the real issue is asymmetric information, that you don't know, so you trust somebody else. And then that is the real barrier to entry, the trust that you have. And this trust then gets turned around on you. You trust them, you don't realize that they're screwing you. They use the asymmetric information, they abuse the trust. And they do insider trading, they do pump and dump, non-transparent accounting, obfuscation. We'll get to each of those. Do you try to make a good investment? Of course you do. But not everybody does. Think about it. You're a bank. You want to invest, put your money or your depositors' money in something that's going to last and be good. Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. But that's not the way banks operate. I deposit money in the bank, thinking the bank is going to lend that money in mortgages to my neighbors or other people to build good things. That's not what they do. Yes, they lend the money in mortgages, but they don't hold on to those mortgages. They sell the mortgages. They lend the money to a business. They don't hold on to that debt. They sell it. So the issue for them is not, is this going to be a good mortgage? Is this going to be a good investment that's going to pay off? It is this a mortgage? Is this an investment that I can sell to somebody else at a good price? Now you could say, what's the difference? If it's not going to be a good investment, then nobody will pay for it. If it's not a good mortgage, nobody will pay for it. No, not if they trust the company that originated the mortgage or the investment. Not if you can persuade people, oh, this is great, trust me, trust me, trust me. Abusing the trust. It's like, that date you got off of Tinder. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust her. Um, everybody is taller and better looking. Well, every man is taller, every woman is whatever. Okay. What you want is an investment that you'll be able to sell. Banks originate mortgages, originate investments with the intent of distributing them. Originate to distribute. That is one of the major problems with, maybe the biggest single, well, there are a bunch, but that is definitely maybe the biggest single problem. Originate to distribute. Dump. Pump and dump. Tell everybody it's great. Pump it up. Tell everybody it was a great investment, and then dump it on them and run like hell. In the case of mortgages, mortgage brokers often get paid for the volume of mortgages, not for the quality of the mortgages. Financial firms, in effect, get paid the fees, which amount to often to over half of a financial firm's profits. The fees are what they get just for writing up the mortgage or writing up the investment. It doesn't matter if it's no good. Left to their own devices, financial firms don't want to hold long-term investments. Why hold on to that mortgage if you can sell it? You sell it, you're risk-free. Everybody knows the future is unknown, which means that nobody really wants to hold on to long-term investments. Except you're stuck with the long-term investment. Society can't get rid of its long-term investments. Financial firms can get rid of their long-term investments, but as a society, we put money into houses, we put money into factories, we put money into long-term facilities, that things that will pay off only over a long period of time. But no financial firm wants to really do that. We need people, we need institutions that will do that, which means accepting the risk of these long-term investments. But no financial firm wants to accept that risk if they can sell them. They prefer to speculate short-term investments originating to distribute. Write an investment, sell it to someone else, collect the origination fee, avoid the long-term risk, and walk away. Originate to distribute leads to dangerous practices. Here we really start to go crazy, because this was what led up to the financial crisis and the lesser depression of 2008. And then, everybody learned their lessons and not doing it again. Oh, bullshit. I mean, there had been some tightening of the regulations. Regulations were basically abandoned under the Trump administration. There's been some tightening of them since, but you know what? Financial firms make a lot of money. Remember the earlier slide? And they donate that money to political campaigns, and they hire lawyers and economists to argue, we don't need these regulations. We don't need these regulations. Well, okay, so don't trust anybody here. Okay, who cares if the loan's good, as long as it appears to be good and you can sell it? So they had, and these were terms of art on Wall Street. Ninja loans, no documentation, no income, no jobs, no assets. People reported that they took out a mortgage and they were told what to write on the mortgage application for that income, for the value of the property, etc. People found out after the fact that the mortgage broker changed what they had written. They applied for a mortgage, honestly reporting their income, the value, etc. And then they found out that they added a zero at the end of their income. And things like that. It's like crazy. But the guy who originated the loan walked away with an origination fee. The bank that originated the loan walked away with an origination fee. And then they sold the mortgage to somebody else, some sucker. That's what they call it. That is also a term of art. you and me, were suckers. Lawyers' loans. They just made it all up. They created markets. Oh my God, this was, oh. Every major bank, every major financial firm did something like this. They created a subsidiary. Then they sold all that crap. This GE Capital did this. And, ended up being caught holding the bag because GE Capital created a subsidiary to which they sold a lot of their junk as soon as they originated it. So that was the first place to sell the junk. The idea was that GE Capital's subsidiary would then resell it to somebody else. Well, when things started to go sour, they couldn't resell it. And they started piling up all this crap in the GE Capital subsidiary. The fallback for GE Capital was, we'll just declare bankruptcy to that subsidiary. And all we'll lose will be our original investment in it. What happened to the people who had invested in those loans? They're just caught holding the bag. Lehman Brothers, same thing. Okay, screw up, no worries. If you're too big to fail. GE Capital was too big to fail. Citigroup was too big to fail. Lehman Brothers was not too big to fail, which turned out to be a huge mistake because guess what? Lehman Brothers was too big to fail. So when Lehman Brothers was allowed to fail, the Fed decided we'll let Lehman Brothers fail. And that'll be a warning to everybody else because we don't want everybody to have this idea that we're going to bail them out every time they make a mistake. Well, guess what? When Lehman Brothers failed, it turned out that Lehman Brothers had swaps and loans with all the other institutions throughout the world. And when Lehman Brothers went down, everybody else was stuck. What happened to my money? I had lent all this money to Lehman Brothers. I made this agreement with Lehman Brothers and and then the dominoes fell. So the Fed had to, the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury had to step in and bail them all out. Too big to fail. And things are even worse now. A relatively small share of the banks control a much, much larger share of total deposits now than in the past. Meaning that these banks, we can't let them fail because if they fail, then they'll bring down the entire economy. If Citibank fails, then who's going to cover the checks for many of America's workers? If Bank of America fails, then where are we going to get next week's, how am I going to pay next week's credit card since my account in Bank of America will be frozen? The whole problem here is that they can keep their winnings and pass along the losses to everybody else. As long as we allow free enterprise in financial services, when these big companies make a bad investment, we've got to bail them out. But when they make a good investment, they keep the winnings. They're betting with other people's money, with house money. What a great deal. And then they can just go on giving out their huge bonuses. So what if they lie? Okay. The whole set of bad motivations. This time is different. Oh, everybody else is making so much money. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac used to be the federal housing companies, used to be controlled and owned by the federal government. That went back to the New Deal. Then they were privatized on the idea that, oh, they're private, then they'll be better managed. Oh, garbage. For a while, they continued to behave themselves very responsibly, lending out mortgage money, insuring mortgages, etc. And they were attacked a lot. I could say by Republicans, but they were also attacked by some Democrats for not making more money and for being too cautious. So they started, and within the company, because these were semi-public private companies. The federal government had put up the money to start them and owned a big share, but it was a passive investor. They're basically privately run companies. And management wasn't making for themselves, they weren't making the money that everybody else was making. Oh, all these other people making so much money running banks, and I'm not. So we should start doing what everybody else is doing. And after all, it will be fine. It will be fine. Yeah, there were the problems in the 1930s, and there was a problem in 1987, and there was the problems with the savings and loan debacle. But that was then. Since 1993, nothing terrible has happened. Well, except for the Russian debt crisis and the East Asian financial crisis. But nothing's happened for at least 3 years, 5 years. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac started doing what everybody else was doing, making these reckless mortgages, ninja mortgages, liar's loans. And then they went bankrupt. When they went bankrupt, they were bailed out by the Fed or the Treasury. AIG, this giant financial insurance firm, had insured all these companies, and AIG turned a blind eye on what they were doing, figuring that whatever, this time's different, it will be fine, you know. And AIG had to be bailed out, like $80 billion. But the other thinking was, and I think the people at AIG and the people at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac were thinking, it will blow up, but I'll be gone by then. I'll have gotten another job. I'll have retired. I'll have made so much money that it won't matter. Who cares if it all goes bad? I'll be gone. You'll be gone. You lie for me. I'll lie for you. And it will all be fine because we'll be too big to fail. Ultimately, I repeat, the markets are not policed by competition because competition doesn't really happen. You know, so we get all these lies, forward trading, all tell everybody it's great, a lie, and they'll buy the stuff, pump and dump, lie, sell it to somebody. It's all about taking advantage of the information that you have that other people don't have. And you're so big, they can't police you. Yeah. Think about it. If the United States government cannot police these banks, who in the world can? You know, I mean, the United States, Europe, China, maybe Japan. You know, after that, you know, these banks go into other countries and they're so much bigger and they offer such nice deals. So they get to set up as, you know, in, you know, some Caribbean island or in some small European country. You know, why are there so many banks in Luxembourg? But those countries, they don't get regulated. They're too big to regulate for those little countries. And those little countries, you know, Ireland went through this. Yeah, Iceland went through this. Yeah. So that said, we need financial markets. We need somebody who will lend for long-term investments. But we can't trust private financial firms. And this guy here won the Nobel Prize. This woman here was head of the Federal Reserve and Treasury Secretary under Biden. Both professors at Berkeley. George Akerlof's dissertation, one paper from his dissertation was published as Market for Lemons, Quality Uncertainty in the Market Mechanism. It bears on financial markets, but it also exposes a larger general problem with markets: uncertainty, asymmetric information. You know something, the other guy doesn't. Because the other guy knows you know that, something that they don't know. They don't trust you, and they won't do business with you. You want to buy a used car. The seller tells you it's wonderful. You don't believe them. I hope you don't believe them. You don't trust them. Of course they tell you it's wonderful. Therefore, you assume it's a lot worse than they say. So will you sell a used car that you know is good? You know it's a good car, but nobody will believe you. So you will never get a fair price for your used car. So nobody who has a good used car will offer it on the market, because nobody's offering good used cars on the market. There are no good used cars on the market, and you are right to think that every used car that's being sold is a lemon. Therefore, people will only sell lemons, and nobody will want to buy a used car. Isn't it great? I think it's really wonderful. The used car market is filled with lemons. You're right to assume any used car is a lemon. You only pay lemon prices, so people will only sell lemons, unless you have a way of certifying quality. I love lemonade. How do you certify quality? A dealer with a reputation to protect. The reputation, though, gives them market power, gives them monopoly power. So if you want to buy a used car in the Amherst, Northampton area, you go to Pleasant Journey. They have a reputation. They have a reputation to protect. So they will sell you a good used car at a fair price. And if you have a good used car, you'll sell it to them to sell to other people. And they will give you a price better than you'd get for selling it in the market, where people will assume it's a lemon, but it's not as good a price as you deserve. And they'll sell that car to you, to somebody who wants to buy it, at a price that's reasonable given the quality of the car, but it's still too high. Pleasant Journey makes money on its brand name and its reputation. Theoretically, somebody could come in and start a competing business that would eat into their profits, bring their profits down to something closer to normal. But they'd have to invest for a long time in building reputation. And that takes time, and that's hard. Leo Toyota is another one that has a good reputation. Boyden and Perrin has a good reputation. That we think we can trust them. Okay, financial markets fail because of asymmetric information, and financial intermediaries take advantage of asymmetric information to engage in short-term thinking, knowing that they're too big to fail. And that's why we've got a major part of why we have such problems in our economy. Why we don't have the investments that we need, and why our macroeconomy is subject to greater fluctuations than it should. Okay, live long and prosper, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.